Okay, so we have Kubernetes up, we have traffic in our first OpenFlow, we have Grafana up. Let's add something to our toolbox for optimizing, monitoring and troubleshooting our installation. So with the OpenTelemetry we can also collect spans, and spans is basically a way of us to send a list of events and payloads with those events and tie them together in a sequence, and that sequence can span multiple servers and applications. But just for the sake of this, just imagine that it's a way of us of measuring how long something takes and what it's spending time on in each part of that. So OpenFlow Helm chart supports deploying Jaeger and Zipkin. They are pretty much similar. None is better than the other. I chose Jaeger for this example. So by default we can push on a Jaeger that collects all the spans in memory, and that works quite well for very small installations, but once you start getting load on, it's gonna be hogging memory like a maniac. So in those cases you probably wanna deploy some storage for saving the spans. They recommend using Elasticsearch or something like that, I think. But I like the simplicity of Cassandra, and since I can reuse Cassandra for other things, I often use Cassandra for storing spans. We're not going to be using it in this example, but just keep in mind that just enabling the collecting of spans will greatly increase the amount of resources that you need and are going to be using. If I remember correctly, this has to be false. Yeah, I think this is correct. So I need to delete this to force it to update its configuration. But if I redeploy now, this will now also deploy Jaeger, and it will update the configuration for OpenTelemetry to also collect spans and send them to Jaeger, because Jaeger was what we added to the configuration file. So once I do that, sorry, if I go to our test OpenFlow and I sign in, I want to make sure that it's up and running before I, yeah. So now it's up and running. I'm not going to reload a couple of times, and if everything went well, I can now go to Jaeger, and I forgot my password. I'm gonna stop the video, sorry. Yeah, that was not embarrassing. So I can now sign in. And it worked. So what happens now is that by me just visiting the OpenFlow page, OpenFlow will now be sending information about everything that it did. So for instance, this was me logging into Jaeger. If I sign in, we can come on. I'm just gonna search. That's easy. I can find the sign in happening right here. So I can go in and I can see exactly what happened as part of the sign in, which functions were called, how long did it take, were there any significant events as part of that. And generally I can troubleshoot a lot of things as part of running OpenFlow. But we don't use that only for my code and OpenFlow. We can also do that with our Node-REDs. So here we have a OpenFlow, and if I add an inject node, I'm out of good ideas. Yeah, I'm just gonna do a simple inject and show. Yeah. So if I start clicking this button and submitting a couple of times, if we go back to Jaeger, we now have a Node-RED service, and if we do a search here, you can now see the injects that I did and the call to the debug node and how long was done on those. So this is a very, very, very powerful and cool tool for troubleshooting how long is things taking, or seeing if something that you didn't expect was getting called, or yeah, generally this is just a super handy tool for a lot of different reasons, for a lot of different things. We can actually also use this for the robot. So if I go and reset this, so if I create a simple workflow, so first I need to sign in, of course. And now I prepared a small example here. So if I run this workflow, this will then call another workflow that clicks the calculator, and that's pretty much it. And now if I go into Jaeger, that's me being a little bit too fast. In order for the robot to send information, the OpenTelemetry server of course needs to be exposed on the internet so the robot can connect to it and deliver its statistics. So if we are lucky, there are our new root. And I'm just quickly gonna restart the robot. I don't think it's necessary, but I'm gonna do it anyway. Yes, our calculator. Run, 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 run. And now the robot could deliver its statistics, and if we go in here, we can now see the different workflows getting called. We can see what was part of it, we can see how long it takes. We can do all kinds of troubleshooting or performance optimization on our robot workflows. I said there was a catch, and the catch is that I removed the OpenTelemetry part from OpenRPA in the latest version. It seems to be memory leaking, and I just didn't have time to figure out why. So I'm either going to be making two builds of OpenRPA with OpenTelemetry and without, for those that need it for troubleshooting, or hopefully they will get it fixed. Yeah, I'm working on that. But yeah, if you want this right now, you can simply just download 1250, which is the latest version that has it, and I will be pushing new versions later that still has OpenTelemetry part of it. It is a very, very nice tool for troubleshooting what is going on. I highly recommend it. But again, we still have access to all the goodies inside OpenFlow and inside our Node-REDs, and that still works absolutely perfectly. Yeah. One last thing around this. If I just quickly recreate this Node-RED. Then if this has been enabled, you get access to sending custom spans to Jaeger. So basically, instead of going through everything that happens, you can create your own logic for what is actually happening inside a specific flow. So you could set, I don't know, do vision. It doesn't matter. Do something, right? And we could add a small delay, and say then do something else, and let's end all of them. So the power of doing it this way is that instead of getting everything inside the inside Jaeger, which can be quite a lot, especially if you're looping or something like that, maybe you just want to add the things that make sense to you. So what we actually get by doing custom spans is that you can then define what to log when, in what makes sense to you, and thereby get a more easy to read trace. You can also use this for sending custom matrices. So if you have something that makes sense to you, I don't know what that could be, but you can pretty much make up any name you want. So this could be soap count. Let's say we are measuring how many soaps we're producing from some soap machine. I can register a custom metric that can be used inside Grafana to watch that. And you can add custom labels here. And you can also keep it alive. This is quite interesting. So usually when you're sending metrics, if you stop sending a metrics, that means the metric doesn't exist. So it will disappear from graphs over time, unless you're looking at times when you were actually sending it. But nothing is not the same as null or, yeah, so if it is important that you are constantly sending something, but you don't get a value non-stop, we can use this as keeping the last label, last value and labels alive. So basically is that if I now go and send a payload with the number 10, this will not just send 10 once, this will keep sending 10 in the aggregation that we decided to use, which is default 5 seconds. So this will be an average of the value of over 5-second interval being sent onwards throughout the system. So now if I go to our Grafana and create a custom graph and choose Prometheus, I can now find takes a little while to go through. But we can change the number. So we actually see a difference. Yeah, I guess that's just IT for you. I restarted the Node-RED and then the number started coming in. I've seen that before, I'm not sure why. Anyway, so if we go back and have a fresh dashboard and we go to Prometheus, we can now find our soap count. And that means if we take a 15-minute rain, for instance, we can now see those values getting populated into OpenFlow. Yeah. Yeah. So anyway, here's the 10 and here's the 20. Oh, I see the old values here. So maybe it wasn't a restart that needed. Ah, okay, good. So basically, this is an awesome way of, again, creating your own way of monitoring something. And again, because this, because Prometheus has this alert possibility, you can create alerts on this specific counter and then trigger an alarm or trigger a REST service or trigger whatever you want as part of doing that monitoring on your custom code. So that custom code inside Node-RED could then be based on what you're doing, what you're processing, or pulling out numbers of other systems. It doesn't really matter, but it comes an easy gateway of injecting stuff into your monitoring, and you can then use that as part of your monitoring. Yeah, I think that pretty much covered what I wanted to talk about here. So again, good luck.